CTV's Lisa Rossington reports.
Officials work to remove the mangled wreck of a vehicle from underneath the Rutherford Creek Bridge south of Pemberton.
Can tell you that the vehicle has been found and the 2 individuals have been named deceased.
The unidentified victims were in a vehicle that plunged into raging waters after a section of Highway 99 was swept away during an intense rainstorm. Searchers are also looking for a second vehicle, a red SUV. 3 managers of Whistler's Mojo's Bar were returning home to Pemberton from their shift when their Pathfinder careened into the water. One man, Casey Burnett, managed to scramble to safety. His brother, Jamie, and Ed Elliott are still missing. Today, employees of the bar joined the search effort on the ground. A few kilometers from the search, residents in Pemberton are working quickly to build walls of sandbags against the Lillooet River, which is threatening to crest its banks.
It's pretty devastating. I've always seen it on the news before, whatever, people's places getting flooded, and you just think, wow, you know, it's devastation, and now it actually happens to you, and hey, you just wake up, I guess.
How you doing?
Some are forced to use boats to get around. Hundreds have pitched in to help those whose homes are now underwater.
Officials say up to 200 people have been evacuated from their homes, and it's not over yet. There are still 4 more days of heavy rain expected.
There is no road access in and out of Pemberton. Crews scramble to shore up the eroding highway, but it is no match for the raging waters.
This is the golf course in Pemberton. No golfing going on here, and there probably won't be for quite some time. Almost everything is underwater, and that way is across most of the Pemberton Valley. The majority of Pemberton's 10,000 residents spent the day in the rain today, sandbagging to save what's left of their homes.
Really holding it back. I had this.
Crews are also working around the clock to rebuild the roads that were washed out early Saturday morning. Along with it, the lives of 2 residents. 2 others are still missing. One of those is 25-year-old Jamie Burnett. He is on the right. His brother Casey on the left managed to scramble to safety when the vehicle they were driving in plunged into the river.
At first you just feel sick.
Now the food supply in Pemberton is getting low, and helicopters bringing much-needed supplies are having a tough time landing.
When a torrent of water buckled rail and highway bridges, 2 vehicles plunged into the river in the foggy pre-dawn darkness. 2 people are still missing. Much of the floodwaters collecting here in a dam downstream. Engineers forced to open the spillway before it burst its banks, releasing a powerful surge of water.
By this morning, heavy equipment began the difficult and dangerous task of trying to repair one of BC's main highways. It is now officially the rainstorm of the century. Never since records have been kept has so much rain fallen so fast and for so long, quickly choking river streams, wiping out bridges, eroding riverbanks, and undermining railway tracks.
Describe the last few days, the feeling of watching the water come up and that sort of thing.
Kind of a feeling of hopelessness, knowing it's going to happen, but you can't do anything about it. You just sit and watch it, and you know nothing can be done, and you just hope for the best.
The basics are becoming scarce in Pemberton. People are stocking up before grocery stores run out completely. There's no gas left at this station. Things aren't much better down the road, where motorists can only get a maximum of $10 worth of gas once a day.
Most of the stations are out in town. Petrocan has a little bit left. They suspect by the end of the day that they'll be out of fuel as well.
Getting in and out of Pemberton by road is impossible right now. The bridge that provided a critical link to the community collapsed. Crews are working to build a temporary one, but it won't be complete for days. Even minor roads are washed out. Residents were hoping supplies would come by air, but heavy rain and fog kept the helicopter grounded for much of the day. Despite more rain, water levels are actually dropping in Pemberton, but it is a constant battle for residents here trying to keep their homes safe or damage to a minimum. Brendan Martin has been up for 48 hours straight, trying to keep water from seeping back into his basement.
It came up the wall 18 inches, maybe 18, and but it's gone. As fast as it came up, it's gone down.
His neighbors are pitching in to help, but everyone is getting tired. There are many, though, who can't go home. Hundreds who were forced out of their homes because of the floods. The rain was expected to stop by midweek, but the forecast has changed. Cloudy skies and more rain is expected for the rest of the week. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News.
With no temporary bridge expected for days, what is here is heavily rationed.
We'll have product in here probably by midnight tonight, and we'll just be stocking the shelves, both stores, and we're on our way.
Until now, the basics, bread, milk, have been airlifted in, along with 30,000 sandbags to build barricades and protect what isn't already ruined. Already an estimated $20 million in damage. The province is promising compensation for victims evacuated from their homes. Search for the two still missing has been suspended. It's just too dangerous. The bridge they were on was washed away. They were swallowed up by the river with no notice. Questions also to BC Hydro. It says it had no choice but to release water from the Daisy Lake Reservoir, water that contributed.
The lifeline to this now waterlogged town was severed early Saturday morning when raging waters wiped out the Rutherford Creek Bridge just south of Pemberton and washed out a part of the highway north of town, severing the lifeline to this community of 2,000. Both ends are now being worked on, but the province can't say for sure when they'll be reopened.
Once they get in there, they estimate 24 to 36 hours if the weather cooperates and the flows go down.
But the weather isn't cooperating. It was yet another day of rain here. So while there may now be more water in Pemberton than residents have ever seen, about 250 people have been forced from their homes and registered as evacuees.
Out here.
The water rising well past the waistline in some cases. The evacuees are now living in a local high school gym. Livestock has also been relocated. Roughly 30 horses now call this local ice rink home. Been going non-stop since Saturday.
It just keeps coming, and no matter what we do, it seems to go up.
And woke up to his neighborhood under ice-cold water and his memories floating in it.
They're gone.
Photographs stored in his garage are now soaked from the filthy runoff. He can't do much more than pick them up and carry on. It's expected there will be hundreds of people in similar circumstances applying for disaster financial assistance in the days ahead. Rob Brown, CTV News.
The debris of a car that ended up in the icy water south of Pemberton early Saturday morning when the Rutherford Bridge washed away. The occupants of this car, believed to be two Whistler restaurant workers, did not survive. The car, split in two, was found by emergency crews wedged underneath a section of the highway. And today, the search from the air continued along Green River and Rutherford Creek for two more men. They were traveling behind the first car in a red SUV in the middle of the night and likely had no idea the bridge had been swept away.
The search conditions are very difficult. As you can imagine, searching anywhere close to a river that's in flood is a fairly dangerous thing to do. Visibility is in and out, so the weather has been creating problems for us throughout the course of this search.
Missing are Ed Elliott and Jamie Burnett of Pemberton.
In the meantime, crews are now constructing a new bridge, and the Highways Ministry says it will be several days before the highway between Whistler and Pemberton is once again open. Lisa Rossington, CTV News, south of Pemberton.
The road closures have created another problem for motorists. Whistler and Pemberton have run out of gasoline. Delivery trucks haven't been able to reach stations because of the floods. It wasn't until late this afternoon when the road into Whistler finally opened and gas trucks could make it through.
And the search for two people missing when they drove off the road into the river continued today. Our reporter Linda Aylesworth is on her way back from Pemberton. She'll have the very latest on that at 6 o'clock.
Just down the road in Mount Currie, Barry O'Donohoe has yet to discover how much damage his home has sustained. While the water levels have gone down 2 feet since yesterday, it's still knee-deep inside.
Just gather up what I can, clean what I can, get some heat going in there. Hopefully the water goes down.
Geneva and her husband have just returned to their home on the reserve. Here, too, the water has receded several feet, but it's still a mess. If they ever get that pump working, they'll find out just how much damage their home has sustained.
The unfortunate thing on here is that we had a gas can in there, and when that flooded, it turned over the gas can, so the whole house smells like gas now. So that's about the worst of it there now, I guess.
But there is some good news. Not only has the rain stopped, for now at least, but Highway 99 to Lillooet, washed out for the last few days, has been reopened. Now, much-needed deliveries of food can get into the Pemberton Valley by road. That wasn't the case last night. An enormous Chinook helicopter dangling a cargo filled with 23,000 pounds of milk, juice and bread dropped its cargo right in the village of Pemberton. It was quite a show and a huge relief.
Well, we needed this delivery big time. Our shelves are empty right now, and you know, we've got mothers here with babies and that sort of thing, so we need this milk product big time.
With any luck, the worst is over. It's been a dreadful and costly experience. But the wonderful thing about the people in this valley is that they make sure no one has to face this disaster alone.
Still stands that we are looking for 2 missing individuals.
In the town of Pemberton, some optimistic signs. Things are getting back to normal. After having to fly in emergency supplies by helicopter, a convoy of trucks made its way into town this morning, bringing much needed food and essentials. Despite a couple of small breaches, all the dikes seem to be holding and the water levels are starting to recede. Anyone in the Pemberton area on well water is advised to boil water before drinking, and officials are asking people to stay away from the construction at Rutherford Creek Bridge. As we mentioned earlier, crews are working 24 hours a day to try and get a temporary span in place as soon as possible.
This morning, the Pemberton RCMP called off the search for Jamie Burnett and Ed Elliott. The conditions are too dangerous, and the likelihood of survival is too small for anyone else to risk their lives.
It's not safe for the personnel to work further on it, and we don't want them to risk their lives in a search that's not going to produce positive results at this time. We simply have to wait for Mother Nature to take her course here and for the rivers to fall a bit.
This weekend's washout at Rutherford Creek is now likely responsible for 4 deaths. How Casey Burnett managed to escape is an incredible story.
Survived, but one young man did manage to make it to safety after the SUV he was in drove off a washed-out bridge last weekend. The other 2 men in the car are still missing. Today, the search for them was called off. The surviving man talked about his ordeal today. CTV's Rob Brown reports.
He's so young, yet so familiar with grief. At 24 years old, Casey Burnett has outlived both his siblings. Twin brother Brady died in 1997, and early Saturday, older brother Jamie, on the right here, was swept away in the raging waters of Rutherford Creek. The Burnetts and buddy Ed Elliott had just gotten off shift at this Whistler nightclub and were heading home to Pemberton when their SUV hit the ice-cold torrent.
Edward was asking what was going on. I was commenting we were in the river. By the time I was commenting we're in the river, the vehicle was half full of water already, and my brother was calming us down, telling us we should relax, take one last breath, wait for the vehicle to fill up, and then exit it.
Casey was the first one out.
I was in a spin cycle, upside down, all around.
Amazingly, he then managed to grab a hold of a branch and pull himself onto a small island, where he sat in the darkness, looking and listening for the others, hearing nothing but the river. Since then, search and rescue crews have been scouring the area, but all they've found are bits and pieces of the vehicle. With dense fog, they couldn't see, so the search has been called off.
The RCMP and Search and Rescue have assured the families of the missing men that if we had the slightest indication that even one person was still alive, the search would be continued.
After almost 5 days, the victims' families more than understand.
We don't want them to risk their lives in a search that's not going to produce positive results at this time.
And having been here before, Barry Burnett also knows it's time to say goodbye.
To my son, Jamie, I'd like to give thanks for the 27 years of love, happiness, and joy.
1 week after the tragedy that took 4 lives, construction of a new bridge over Rutherford Creek south of Pemberton is close to completion. It is a temporary bridge that is literally pushed across the water.
What's happening right now is we're advancing this Bailey Bridge. We've got a very light section on the front, which is what we call the nosing, and that's just to get the position of the bridge correct at the far side. without undue weight. And once that is positioned, we can pull it in with the full triple strength sections that you see here.
A week ago, a torrential downpour washed out the bridge in the middle of the night. 2 cars plunged into the creek, which had become a raging river. 4 died, and questions still remain about how it could happen.
My understanding is there was a big dump of snow last weekend, or just prior to last weekend. It was down almost to the village in Whistler. That was followed by Pineapple Express, so you had a double whammy. You had melting snow, a lot of precipitation, and that's the sort of thing that will create that 200-year event.
Once the bridge is in place, there will obviously be great relief that Pemberton's lifeline to Whistler and Vancouver is operational again. But it comes as little comfort to those who lost loved ones in the tragedy.
Today, family members and friends of the victims returned to the scene, quietly mourning the senseless deaths. And the rebuilding continues. Officials now saying the temporary 1-lane bridge could be in place by tomorrow. A permanent crossing possibly by next summer.
We'll be able to travel between Whistler and Pemberton by tomorrow. Floodwaters last week washed away the Rutherford Creek Bridge, but crews spent much of the day working to install a temporary bridge today. Meanwhile, BC's Premier has now seen the flood damage firsthand after an aerial tour of the region. CTV's Hazel McClement reports.
Just a few meters more and there will be a new temporary bridge linking Pemberton to Whistler. Crews have been working to replace the Rutherford Bridge since last Saturday, after torrential rain and an early snowfall combined to create what's being called a 200-year flood event, sweeping down the creek and pulverizing the bridge.
Obviously, they want to find out what triggered the event and whether our designs are correct.
2 men were killed when their car plunged into the abyss created by the washout. 2 others are still missing after their vehicle also fell into the raging river. Family of the victims were at the riverside today, quietly mourning their loved ones, leaving flowers by the river's edge. In a helicopter overhead, BC's Premier got his first look at the devastation. And the Premier is also promising financial assistance to those affected by the floods.
People here will say sometimes, you know, we don't have insurance, we're worried. They shouldn't be worried. They're going to get assistance. So it's a $1,000 deductible. It's 80% up to $100,000 of assistance. So that will happen for flood victims.
The railway bridge to Pemberton is being repaired as crews work to slide the temporary so-called Bailey Bridge into place. A Bailey Bridge is World War II technology, but just because it's been around for a long time doesn't mean it can't throw a few surprises. Placing rollers under the 130-foot structure took several hours longer than expected.
It's a very special event. We want it to be right, we want it to be safe, and then the pain is worth it.
But officials promise the bridge and decking will be in place in time for the bridge to open to single-lane alternating traffic sometime Sunday. And they're pledging a permanent replacement before next Labor Day. Hazel McClement, CTV News at the Rutherford Bridge.
A temporary bridge linking Whistler to Pemberton will be open to the public, and residents will finally be able to access their homes. A temporary span is replacing the Rutherford Creek Bridge, which was washed out just over a week ago. About 30 people have been working continuously on the bridge, putting the final touches on the span as we speak. Once the skeleton was put in place yesterday, it had to be decked, and the lead up to the bridge had to be built. When it finally opens at 7 tonight, flag people will be stationed on either end of the bridge, allowing single alternating traffic only to cross. Although the opening of the bridge is definitely good news for Pemberton residents, the rebuilding process is far from over. A permanent new crossing won't be ready until next year, and there are many other areas of the Sea to Sky Highway that are in need of some major repair following the floods. Jazz Johal reports.
A week after one of the worst floods in the Squamish Valley, a line of boulders, rock and gravel are being poured to bolster the shoreline.
We've got no side shoulder left. If we don't dump it, that can shake and go back, so we have to make a support for the train.
How long do you think it's going to take before all this part is done here?
It's a three more days, and then should be done.
And then the rail line will be up and ready to go?
Yeah.
The rail system is rarely noticed by many British Columbians, but this line plays a significant role in moving goods and services like lumber, cars, and tourists. These ties support thousands of jobs in our province.
I mean, this is our lifeline, keeps us going. Like, we got to have trains going in order to make money, so. Actually, what we're doing is this will be the main line we're sitting on right now. Everything gets moved over for the passing track, so we actually have meeting trains again. And once we get it all going, then we're in business.
See the debris, too, down here.
Yesterday, Premier Campbell and Defence Minister John McCallum were given a tour of the Pemberton and Squamish Valley. He's promising help for those affected and acknowledged the cost to the province.
It's amazing to see, you know, rail track lying kind of like old spaghetti in the side of a river. So there's lots of work to be done there, and it'll be a few weeks, I'm sure, before that's complete. My bet is we're looking at, you know, $20 to $30 million of overall damage that we're going to have to try and deal with.
We have not officially said that the floods are eligible for assistance, but if ever there was a natural disaster, it has to be a flood, and so there's no doubt in my mind that it will be eligible.
While the money may come eventually, there's plenty of work to do. At Rutherford Creek, there are two sets of work crews. On one side, they were busy erecting a temporary rail bridge. Next to it, a temporary structure for motorists. Early this afternoon, they weren't sure if they would make tonight's self-imposed deadline.
We're going to be 90% of there tonight.
Yeah, what else is that left to do?
Redecking and building approaches. There's going to be paving, but it'll be open before the paving's done.
It will be?
Yeah, I think so.
They made it. The bridge opens to alternating traffic at 7 p.m. It will, however, be closed tomorrow between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. to allow for paving. By Monday, the only reminder a deadly flood passed through here will be the signs of new construction.